I read that about $1 trillion have been spent on aid in Africa. At least in the remote parts that I often visit, there's not much evidence for where it all went. For 20 years, I and a growing number of others have been providing evidence that demands a verdict. When the poorest country in the world, with an extreme climate on the edge of the Sahara Desert, with no government assistance at that time and minimal non-government organisation assistance, can affect an environmental, economic and social revolution which changed its recent history, this is something that demands a response. It was a revolution which restored 200 million trees across 5 million hectares of previously barren land, and as a result of which an additional 500,000 tonnes of grain are grown every year, enough to feed 2.5 million people. Without irrigation, without fertilisers, improved seeds or subsidies. And as a result of which, gross income going directly to farmers has increased by up to $1,000 per household, or nationwide $900 million. And over that period, all this has come about at a cost of less than $2 per hectare from foreign aid. And this is because the credit for the spontaneous spread and uptake goes to millions of poor, smallholder farmers who could tell a good deal when they saw one. This is evidence which demands a verdict, and especially so in a world desperately in need of solutions. A world on the edge of a precipice, one which, if we fall into it, will take life on Earth into a territory not experienced before in human existence. What we do or do not do in the next 10 years will determine the outcome. In 10 years, there will be 8.5 billion people to feed on a natural resource base, the soil, which is already 40% degraded. Globally, a minimum of 2 billion hectares need restoration. Make no mistake, I didn't class them degraded lands. In my dictionary, these are potential lands, opportunity lands. We will have to feed ourselves with the added significant handicap of climate change and all that means for agriculture. In his old age, a survivor of the American Dust Bowl experience said, "We kept thinking that tomorrow things would change. Sure, you kept doing what you were doing. We thought that maybe there were things that you could do that would make things a bit better than the way they were. You didn't try something different, but you just tried it harder, the same thing that didn't work." When I was fighting desert encroachment, I and many others kept doing the same thing, but doing it harder. Today we face a crisis far greater than the American Dust Bowl experience or the expansion of the Sahara Desert. Life on Earth as we know it is at stake, and for too many, life itself is at stake. We don't have time to just keep doing the same thing, but harder. Business as usual won't save us. We need disruptive approaches and technologies. The disruptive technique which transformed Niger was and is embarrassingly simple. It mimics the same principles that a vine dresser uses on a grapevine to get the best results. Each spring, excess branches are culled, leaving the best ones, which are then trained and managed. And the emphasis is on management. From drylands to the tropics, from lowlands to the highlands, just beneath the soil surface of vast areas of the world's degraded lands lays a repository of living stumps, roots and seeds, a treasure chest of suppressed life, suppressed potential, ready and waiting to be released. The Regrading Approach, farmer-managed natural regeneration, takes the principles of selection, pruning, and management and applies them to the stems emerging from this existing repository. And hence, it's a very low-cost, rapid and scalable approach, an approach which can and is being adopted spontaneously by millions of the world's poorest smallholder farmers and communities. In that we attempt to work with whole communities and populations, this approach is also a forest and landscape management approach, because it requires changes in such mismanagement practices as total annual burning, complete removal of all above-ground woody biomass, and continuous free-range grazing. In that success depends on human behaviour change, its application involves, first of all, the regreening of the mindscapes and turning of enemies into friends. We walk alongside, with respect and politely, we walk alongside individuals and communities, demonstrating that when we work with nature instead of fighting against it, nature will work for us. It involves demonstrating that a better future can be built for ourselves and our children when we restore vegetation cover on the land we manage. I almost withdrew what I was about to say in fear that it would be misconstrued, but please accept it in the spirit it's intended, not as an arrogant criticism of what we're currently doing, but as a challenge to take a closer look at these low-cost, people-driven, nature-friendly approaches. I'm not offended if you doubt the figures that I've shared. I won't be angry if you question the figures. But at my age, it's getting harder to be patient with those who will not invest the time required to read the growing body of evidence and see for themselves that even if half of what I shared is true, I won't be able to accept that easily if they don't do that. And it's even harder to be patient with those who know it's true but continue with business as usual. Coming back to the need to approach things differently, Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." And I would add to that, we cannot solve them working alone. I was in Zurich earlier this week, and before I stood up to speak, they told me, oh, this podium, after World War II, it's where Churchill delivered his speech, challenging Europe to unite and work together to rebuild the continent. And I don't know if they were trying to boost my ego because I shared the same podium or to intimidate me by telling me that. But that time has come again. We have to unite and work together to restore devastated lands, not just in Europe, but globally. At this point, it's appropriate that I honour Dr. Dennis Garrity. Former Director General of ICRAF, United Nations Dryland Ambassador, founder and chair of the Global Evergreening Alliance, for his enormous vision and tireless efforts to make the world a better place. The Global Evergreening Alliance is an international NGO whose members include development and conservation organisations, research institutes and advocacy organisations. It coordinates the development and implementation of massive-scale environmental restoration, sustainable agroforestry and forest projects in developing countries around the world. I see it as a vehicle through which we can do disruptive, business unusual activities to tackle some of the world's most pressing problems. 6 years ago, Tony Simons told me that if you spell Tony backwards, it reads, "Why not?" I like that. Why not is a very good question. Why not mount a global regreening revolution, the likes of which have never been seen before in the world? One which addresses multiple issues simultaneously, one which does it with no regrets. There's no side effects with this type of approach. We have the precedent. We have the lessons learned. There's a growing body of research findings. We have the resources. And if we love life, if we love our children, we have both a solemn responsibility and a life and death motivation to give nothing less than our best. Will you join us? Why not?